Hello and welcome back once again to the Who's He podcast YouTube channel. And this time I'll be taking a look at 1995's Judge Dredd starring Sylvester Stallone. Now let's go back to 1995. I was 25 years old and I was insanely excited to see this movie. I was at the time an avid reader of 2000 AD, so when they announced that a film of Judge Dredd was in production, I thought all my prayers had been answered. Comic books' best anti-hero was going to be dispensing Mega City 1 style justice on the big screen. But of course, who would play him? I seem to recall that Clint Eastwood was everyone's favourite to take on the role, and he would fit the age of Dredd, who in the comic series aged in real time. But as we know, that role went to Sylvester Stallone, who by that point was in a bit of a decline in his career. His last major hit at the time was 1993's Demolition Man. So when I heard of his casting, I was sceptical to say the least. But he did have the screen presence, and I suppose most importantly for a lot of people, he did have the chin required to play Joe Dredd. So before the film came out in the cinemas, I was picking up on little bits and pieces in the press, particularly that the director Danny Cannon, no relation, who professed himself to be a fan of Judge Dredd, so I was getting a feeling that, well, this film was in somewhat a safe pair of hands, as he would understand the character. There was no little piece of information that I sort of kind of liked at the time, was that all the vehicles in this version of Mega City 1 were all manufactured by Land Rover, as they were the only surviving car maker after the apocalypse. And then I saw the judge's uniform in the newspapers. Designed by Gianni Versace, it certainly looked the part. The gold eagle and shoulder pad armour were all present and correct. And while the uniform was spandex rather than the leather from the comic book, the judge's helmet looked okay, but it was clear that certain liberties had been taken with the design. But, well, as we all know, sometimes this has to be done for practical filmmaking reasons. Now, my next memory is a bit hazy. A mannequin of Stallone as Dredd with the movie version of the Lawmaster bike was put on display at the Leicester Square Planet Hollywood restaurant that Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis owned at the time. But I cannot remember clearly whether this was on display before or after the film came out. But I have a feeling that this was on display before the film was released as part of the promotion for the film. And I liked what I saw. The Lawmaster bike looked amazing, and seeing the judge's uniform up close had me feeling very excited for the film. So when the film was released in the UK in July 1995, I was straight to the cinema to see it. And I can clearly remember the cinema was packed, and the only seats we could get were off to the right of the screen in the very first row. Not the best seats in the house for certain, as it was far too close to the screen, and I left the cinema with neck ache due to also being seated off to the right and looking at the screen like this for the entire night. And that was not my only disappointment of the evening. After watching the film, I left the cinema scratching my head. How did they get this so wrong? How did this mishmash of ideas and grabbing of characters and story elements from 2000 AD ever get made? How did they get the character of Dredd so wrong? And who decided this should be a generic buddy cop movie? Well, after the dust settled, it appears that the major problem with this film was Stallone himself. Not only was he miscast in the role of Joe Dredd, he was also not familiar with the source material. He felt that the movie should be an action comedy, so using his considerable Hollywood clout, out went any semblance of a satirical edge to the plot, and in came loads of humour, mainly delivered by Rob Schneider as Fergie, an actor who I'd never heard of before this film, and I've actually avoided ever since. And all that stuff I was excited about before seeing the film was quickly replaced with incredulation. The iconic Lawmaster bike was replaced with a flying version, which went, well, wrong at the most inopportune moments because, well, you know, comedy. The judges' uniforms were also watered down for everyone apart from Stallone, with those actors losing the eagle adorning their right shoulders and replaced with another massive shoulder pad. I'm not sure if this was purely a cost-saving exercise or just a case of only the star can wear the eagle. As I said earlier, characters were grabbed from the pages of 2000 AD with no real reason for them to be there, such as the ABC Warrior robot. And it's a mistake that lots of films make when trying to adapt comic books. Put as many characters into the film as possible to appeal to the fans, but this is where this ploy falls over. What exactly can you do with all those characters? You want the chief judges? Here they all are before being killed off. You want Rico Dredd? Well, here he is, played by Amanda Santee, who basically chews up each scene he's in before crapping it out and chewing it up all over again. Oh look, here's the Angel Gang, long-term antagonists of Judge Dredd, but let's kill them off after one scene as well. And here's Judge Hershey, a well-respected and skilled street judge, but let's make her ineffective and be Stallone's love interest at the end of the movie for absolutely no reason. And finally, the cloning plot thread. Let's have the clones appear at the end of the film and have them do precisely nothing. I could go on and on with this. There are just so many things wrong with this film. But the one thing that got fans riled the most was Dredd taking off his helmet. Now, I think that even non-fans of Judge Dredd know that since the character first graced the pages of 2000 AD, no one has seen his face. And before anyone says anything, Judge Dredd has removed his helmet in the comic books, but his face is always hidden. But with Stallone starring in the film, there was never really any doubt that his face wouldn't be seen. It was a given. Also, his delivery of Dredd's iconic saying, "I am the law," missed the mark as well, and giving him another saying, "I knew you'd say that," was purely there for comedic effect, and also delivered badly, and it outstayed its welcome very quickly. And a lot of the blame for this mess must also be placed at the feet of director Danny Cannon, no relation. There was not a lot of evidence on display that he was a fan of 2000 AD, and I think really he was not a strong enough director to take on the Hollywood might of Stallone. In fact, Cannon went on record that he would never work with major Hollywood actors again. And, well, he didn't. Stallone also waded in years later blaming the director, but between the pair of them, they screwed up a film that had a lot of potential. But it's not all bad. The set design is amazing, pulling Mega City 1 straight from the pages of the comic book. The ABC Warrior robot, while having no place in the Dredd universe, is an amazing example of practical special effects, and was one of the few highlights of the movie. The makeup of Mean Machine Angel was also amazing and was mostly comic book accurate. It was one of the few things that the film got right, though sadly the character was underused and killed off quickly. Really, this is the film I look back on and think what could and should have been had they got a better script, director and lead actor. And for Dredd fans, we had to wait until 2012 until they got Joe Dredd right on the big screen. But that's a podcast for another day.